That's right. We're two escrow officers that have done this for a real long damn time.
Check, check. Mic check.
Is this thing recording?
Hello, and welcome to ESCROWtainment.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of ESCROWtainment. We are getting good at this.
We are.
I'm feeling good about this. Getting official. All good. We are your hosts. I'm Brittany Siciliano.
I'm Tammy Stone.
And I keep looking at the other camera.
Look at the bottom one.
What are we talking about this week, Tammy?
The process of recording and funding. I mean, to some people that might not be really interesting, but to me it is.
It is.
But I think also it's what is the consummation of the closing?
Oh, God, do we have to use that word? Do you remember that?
Yes. Why did I just say that?
I don't know.
But it is true. I mean, recording and funding is what makes it, recording and funding is what makes it completely official. But when you talk about that, you hear the words closing and funding.
You're right. You're right. We don't really talk about recording much.
Right. That's right.
So, where do we want to start?
You talk about it. You're so good at this. Like we just said, like what is the difference between what does closing mean and what does funding mean?
Okay. Here I go. It's a two-part process.
And here she goes.
Closing. Closing. The act of signing your documents.
That's right. That's all it is.
Everything's been delivered to title. No outstanding conditions. Everything has been signed.
But does that mean it's done?
No. Not at all. But why?
Why?
Because we still have to fund.
That's right. And those are two separate things. I always think like if a buyer comes in and signs and says, okay, so I'm closed, I'm done. You're done, but maybe the seller hasn't been in. Maybe the lender hasn't delivered funds.
Yep. The lender still has to review all the documents.
Right.
It's pretty rare now that a loan is not ready to be closed.
Right.
Sometimes they have to push dates and it gets a little sticky after signing, but most times they just have to look to make sure everybody closed.
That's right. Signed correctly,
Yeah. No missignatures or initials,
right.
And you're good. And then the lender issues funding approval. And what does that mean?
And that means we have all the money.
We have all the money.
We have all the money. Everybody is signed. I think you said it perfectly earlier. When the buyer leaves and they've done their closing, they've given us their approval.
Yes.
They're done.
Yes.
Seller, the same thing. But then the last person that gives their stamp, so to speak, of approval would be the lender.
Yes. Yep. And
then we're funded.
Then we're funded. So then part 2 of the 2-part process is complete. We've closed and now we funded. Now we're in a position to disperse funds and also record documents.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I always think of it as California, that they record before they fund, which to me just sounds weird. And I don't mean that derogatory. It just sounds weird. I feel like you're recording before you've done all those little part steps that you just said.
Yeah.
But it's just the difference in, what do they call it? What are they?
State.
Yeah, like we're an escrow state. Is that because we maybe they're relying on us as the escrow agent that we have all those documents to record?
Yes. So California is a split state. So they have title professionals in one company, and then they have escrow professionals in another company. And we get to be super lucky in Texas in that we do all of it.
Yeah, or there's some states
in one office.
You have to close with an attorney.
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
You're right. So yeah, so here we fund before we record.
Yes.
So we do all the signing, get all the approvals, and then we disperse all the money and kind of simultaneously, but usually right after we record the documents at the county clerk's office.
Yeah.
And that makes it really, really official.
Official. Once it's filed of record, stamped,
right,
sealed, that means
buyer's the new owner.
Buyer's the new owner, and then we're able to issue our title policies.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
What about possession? Does closing and or funding mean possession?
No.
That's kind of one that kind of gets a little blurry sometimes too.
Yeah. So your contracts you have, if you're using the state form in Texas, the truck contract, there are 2 options for possession. One is upon closing and funding.
Both.
And the other is due to a leaseback transaction. That's also been negotiated in addition to the purchase contract.
Right.
So just because you closed does not mean you can take possession.
Doesn't mean you're funded.
This is so important. So many times buyers think that because they came in and closed, they should get their key right then,
Right.
so that they can meet their mover over at the house.
They're already there.
And that may not be the case.
Right.
And a lot of times it's not the case.
Right. It typically, I mean, I won't give any percentages, but it typically happens the same day.
Yeah,
But there are
hours.
things that come up, maybe the lender missed their wire cutoff time. I mean, we've had that. Maybe there's one little internal condition that they have to get cleared. It's all of those things. So until we say it's funded or the lender says it's funded, we're not complete.
No, we're not. So always a good idea not to schedule a late closing if your buyer's expecting to move in that night.
Right.
Probably not wise. Probably not going to get funded that quickly.
Yeah.
Cash transactions are a little different because as soon as the buyer closes and delivers money and the seller's closed, it's done.
Right.
So those are quick. But
yeah, and I think kind of like you just said, that leads to our tip of the day is to educate your buyer and seller on those differences. Like Brittany said, if they're wanting to fund that day, then maybe let's come in before noon. Yeah. Or, if you think there's going to be a delay in it, for sure, let us know.
Yeah. I've even seen people negotiate quick leasebacks.
Yeah.
Because something came up on the day of.
And they got to get
sick.
Sure.
Something happened. I don't know.
Right.
And the least effective dates are from your date of funding, not closing, right?
Yeah.
So part 2 of the 2-part process has to happen for that lease date to be
Which
triggered.
Again, typically usually the same day, but we, as you can tell, we've seen those roll to the next day, and so that kind of takes that precedence there. So closing and funding.
Yep.
Yeah.
You have any stories? Fun stories?
I'm
trying to think of some.
Oh, I do.
Okay, so
I have one.
You always have good stories.
Well, I really don't, but this is just a story that I closed a transaction. This was back before you could e-record.
Okay. It's a long time ago.
We're not talking about that. It was like 2 years ago. It was like 2 years ago. But I closed a transaction. It was bad weather. I mean, it's still February, so we're going to talk lightly on that.
Okay.
But it was a transaction with the lender that it had to be recorded the same day. It was before e-recording, and I know now when I say e-recording, we can record from our computers. It's crazy, but in this particular scenario, I had to jump in my car, and because the weather was bad, I was in my husband's truck, and I literally slid into the courthouse.
No, you didn't.
I did, and ran in and recorded. It was fine, but the funny part is that all the cars around the courthouse were trying to push each other off those curbs of the sides where they've all parked, the little parallel parking, and they can't get off. They can't get back up on the road. And I was like, what am I going to do? I'm in, boots, slacks, whatever. So luckily I came out to my car and just got in and husband's truck, and it just took back off. But it was just a crazy day of having to, it goes back to those days of how we used to have to literally close, fund, and you had to record. And if it needed to be recorded the same day,
you were sending a courier.
You were driving to the courthouse.
Or driving to the courthouse.
Yes.
So were you worried that you weren't going to get back to show that it had recorded? Because of the weather?
No, I think
you're going to get stuck there.
No, I think my driving abilities is more what was the scary part. But that's why my husband was like,
and here you have these original documents.
Yes, somebody's waiting on me to record these because and that just becomes if we're really getting to this, that's where the lender wants their policy to be issued the same day of closing, which means you have to record that day. So that's not always, even though we do close and record pretty close now with the e-recordings, but this particular lender had to be filed the same day of funding. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it was just, I know crazy Texas weather. We don't know how to drive in it. I'm one of them.
Yes.
And to go downtown to the courthouse.
Do you remember the ice storm a few years ago? The blackout, basically.
Yeah. The big one.
I can remember deals not funding the day before that stuff hit. And then you talk about buyers concerned about damages.
Yeah.
the deal's not really being finished. Like that stuff hung
And
out for a minute.
I was fixing to say that really comes into your point of just because it's closed, it's not funded. I mean, I always say that to sellers when they're like, okay, so I'm done. I'm like, yeah, but until the money's in your account, you're still the owner, until you hear specifically from us that it's funded.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important to talk about on that closing and funding.
Yep, absolutely. So what would be a good tip we could offer to our viewers?
Well, I think I kind of blew this one. I said it earlier. Just my tip was to educate your buyer and sellers. Just to educate them on funding is not immediately after they sign. Because that's frustrating for a buyer to come in and think they're going to get those keys immediately, where maybe they're signing first. So just educate your buyer and sellers that typically it will fund the same day, but until we have confirmation from the title company that it's funded, we're in escrow. We're closing in escrow.
Yep. Yeah. Manage expectations.
Right.
Or try to.
Right.
Sometimes you can. Sometimes you can't with certain people.
Right.
But
we help with that too.
Yeah.
What's the challenge? The process of recording and funding.
Another reason we can't fund would be we don't have all the information needed to fund. We get the approval to disperse, but we don't know how to disperse because we don't have instructions on where to deliver commission. We don't have instructions on where to deliver proceeds. I mean, we do have a process to get that information before time, but sometimes things come up and, you just don't, when you're at that point, you just don't want to have anything out there that can cause a delay.
Right.
You never know what can happen.
Or when we've got to that point where everybody's decided we are funded, let's fund.
Let's fund, y'all. It's a party. Let's celebrate. Let's help these people move on, with their lives. So that would probably be my challenge is how can you get your CDA in?
Right.
Before the day of closing so that it's ready to go.
Simple email, to let us know what your preferred method is and then we'll give you what our process is for getting that. But let us know. Definitely it's something that we've got to know.
Mm-hmm. Are we wiring to you? Are we cutting a check? Do you want to pick it up? Are we sending it somewhere for you?
Right.
Help us help you.
Help us help you.
Help us help you.
Well, don't forget, we have an email podcast at McKnightTitle.com. We'd love to connect with you. Shoot us an email. We'll add you to our newsletter that's going out. Brittany, on the social media side.
Yep. If you will like this video, if it's been helpful to you, please subscribe to our channel. Please follow us. Please share this out to any industry colleagues, anyone in your team, anyone you think this might help. Also, we're on most of the platforms. Our podcast is live now on Spotify. Big moment for that. We are Facebook, Instagram, TikTok,
all the things.
Just look up ESCROWtainment. We're there. So,
share.
We are in the business of closing transactions, y'all, and that is what we hope to do this year. We have spent some really good time over the lull of the last year honing our processes. We've got an amazing team backing both of us up, and we are ready to take on your business. So
give us a try.
Our way.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose? Promise you we'll take care of it.
That's right.
If not, you can blast us. We're everywhere. That's scary. Maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Well, that won't happen.
You're right.
Right?
Yeah.
It won't, for sure.
Totally risk-free.
Well, invest in your tomorrow.
Live in your today.
From your two favorite escrow officers, please stay tuned. We have new episodes every week.